My name's Hannah. I'm the pastor here at the United Church of Moscow, and I'm so glad you found us online. I'm hoping that this message will be helpful and hopeful for you wherever you are in your spiritual journey. And if you don't have a faith community to connect with or belong to, I hope you'll consider joining us here at United. We are a welcoming and affirming congregation committed to community, compassion, and justice, and we would love for you to join us. You can find all the information about our church on our website, unitedchurchofmoscow.com, or follow us on social media. We hope to see you in person soon, but for now, please enjoy this message.
This is 1 Peter, because there's 1 and 2 Peter. So this is 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 1 through 10. Thank you. From the CED version. Therefore, get rid of all ill will and all deceit, pretense, envy, and slander. Instead, like a newborn baby, desire the pure milk of the word. Nourished by it, you will grow into salvation, since you have tasted that the Lord is good. Now you are coming to him as a living stone. Even though this stone was rejected by humans, from God's perspective, it is chosen and valuable. You yourselves are being built like living stones into a spiritual temple. You are being made into a holy priesthood to offer up spiritual sacrifices that are acceptable to God through Jesus Christ. Thus it is written in Scripture, "Look, I'm laying a cornerstone in Zion, chosen, valuable. The person who believes in him will never be shamed." So God honors you who believe. For those who refuse to believe, though, the stone the builders tossed aside has become the capstone. This is a stone that makes people stumble and a rock that makes them fall. Because they refuse to believe in the word, they stumble. Indeed, this is the end to which they were appointed. But you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people who are God's own possession. You have become this people so that you may speak of the wonderful acts of the one who called you out of the darkness into his amazing light. Once you weren't a people, but now you are God's people. Once you hadn't received mercy, but now you have received mercy. This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God.
Sometimes, as a preacher, there feels like a sermon has just taken root in your head and in your heart, and God makes a way so that it just comes bursting out of you. And this sermon today is one of those for me. So I pray that it would take root in you as well. Would you pray with me? God, would the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be pleasing to you? And may you give us ears to hear and hearts to receive your word today. Amen.
Amen.
I don't like the word salvation. It feels really churchy, kind of icky a little bit. It's probably because all the context I've heard it in conjures scary images of the afterlife that I'm being saved from. That's the image we often think of when we think of salvation. But honestly, life in the here and now is usually so crazy that I don't really get around to thinking about the hereafter very often. So the concept of salvation just being about what happens after I die doesn't always resonate with me. I saw an Instagram post this week that really sums up my feelings a little more appropriately. I brought a picture. It says, "I don't have the energy for this." People are like, "What is this?" And it's just gesturing vaguely. Life is a lot sometimes. I think this is a feeling a lot of us can relate to. The world is difficult. We are looking for hope in the midst of present hopelessness, joy in the midst of grief, justice in the midst of extreme injustice, love in the midst of apathy. In other words, salvation, here and now, not just for the hereafter. People are not just looking for salvation from a hell they're going to. We are often looking for salvation from a hell we're going through. Verse 2 tells us that through the Word, through Jesus, we will grow into salvation. In other words, Jesus is the salvation that we are looking for, the hope and the joy and the justice and the love that we are craving in the midst of this present life. Jesus is here, not just giving us a get out of hell free card kind of salvation, but a salvation that brings life and flourishing in the midst of the difficulties of our present life. And you know this is true. We've taken time already to express the goodness and the good things, the ways that we see God in our community, the joys that we experience. You have, as verse 3 suggested, tasted and seen that the Lord is good in your own life, in this community. This is why we take communion together every week, because as we taste the bread and the juice, we are reminded that we have tasted and seen the Lord's goodness here and now. Jesus is our salvation, not an escape from, but a way through the joys, the sorrows of life. This is why the text calls Jesus the cornerstone, the capstone, the foundation, the bedrock. Cornerstones, or the bedrock, provide a durable foundation for buildings to be built upon. Before this church was built, before your homes or apartments were built, before any building has ever been built, a layer of bedrock has to be established. A capstone has to be laid. A strong foundation helps secure buildings and ensure their longevity. If you drive around town, you can see several construction projects in various states of development. Some are in the demolition phase. Some are finding the bedrock and laying the foundation. Others are being reconstructed and built up into something new. But there's one construction site that I always think of that always catches my eye. It's located on 3rd and Washington. Perhaps you're familiar with it. I brought a picture.
Yeah.
I drive by this site every day when I come to the church. And I've been told that this project has been going on for several years, or began several years ago. It's supposed to be a music shop with a beautiful grand piano showroom in the bottom storefront and loft apartments built on the stories above it. So in preparation for this new building, the old one was torn down. And the bedrock for this new building was established. But that was several years ago, wasn't it? Nothing new has been built there, I've been told. You can see it. The building project has been halted. It now sits as an eyesore to downtown. It's a painful reminder that the bedrock often gets abandoned. Verse 7 says, the capstone has been tossed aside by the builders. What was meant to be foundational has been discarded. What was meant to be built upon has been left to waste and to cause problems. You have witnessed what it looks like when Christians and Christian institutions and churches abandon the bedrock. When churches and Christian institutions justify and cover up abuse instead of protecting the most vulnerable. When they speak words of hate and judgment instead of love and grace. When they incite violence and stay silent in the face of injustice instead of encouraging peacemaking and advocating for justice. When they turn towards greed and rampant consumerism instead of generosity and contentment. When they gatekeep and exclude the love of God instead of practicing the inclusive love of Jesus. The bedrock has been abandoned by some who claim to follow Christ. The capstone has been tossed aside. Jesus, who was meant to be foundational, has been discarded. What was meant to be built upon has been left to waste and to cause problems. The building on 3rd and Washington, once filled with such promise for a good thing in our community, has become a sore spot for our community. I heard about this building shortly after I came to town. When you ask people about it, they will roll their eyes and tell you their frustrations with it. This is prime real estate, and it looks terrible. It's become a problem for harmonious living. This is not the image of our town that we want to portray. Not to mention that it's a hazard. With each new wind gust, debris from the abandoned site blows onto the sidewalk. Nails and broken concrete threaten the feet of pedestrians or small children's hands or the stability of the elderly. What was meant as a beautiful place of community has become a terrible depiction of division and frustration. What was meant to be foundational has become a stumbling block. What was meant to be the bedrock has become a barrier. And so too, when the church abandons the bedrock, it becomes a barrier. When Christians abandon the ways of Christ, what was meant as a bedrock becomes the barrier to inclusion, to community, to beauty, to flourishing. The foundational ways of Jesus become a stumbling block. When the largest and loudest voices of what it means to be Christian in America today seem to continually abandon the bedrock, Christ himself becomes a barrier for people experiencing the love and the mercy and the justice that Jesus teaches and demonstrates. The salvation, the way through, becomes inaccessible, problematic even, because of those who bear the name of Christ, but discard the ways of Christ. And people continue to get tripped up on Jesus, to get tripped up on this word, Christian, and the consequences are catastrophic. In a 2025 study conducted by Pew Research, they found that among Americans who don't identify as religious, 50% said a primary reason was because they don't like religious institutions, while 49% said they don't trust religious leaders, and 6% agreed that religion is outright harmful. The same population, religiously unaffiliated adults in the US, 40% said religion causes more harm than good. 48% said that it doesn't equal parts harm and good, with only 16% of religiously unaffiliated Americans agreeing that religion is even a positive thing. Those are some bleak statistics. But I don't have to tell you about the way this country feels about Christians. You experience how people feel about Christians every day in this community. On Monday, I went to an emergency town hall meeting for the Latah County Board of Adjustments. The board was voting on whether or not to grant a special use permit to a new business occupying one of the largest storefronts in downtown Moscow. This business plan included a brief comment buried in some subsections that in addition to the new business, they also intended to use this space as an additional location for a Christian nationalist church. For over an hour in this meeting, people stood up and gave testimony after testimony in opposition, encouraging the board to deny this permit. They spoke with emotion and with logic, and they pleaded the board not to allow this type of Christianity to flourish in our town. But there's one comment that really stuck out to me. A woman got up and she calmly shared her story. She said, "I've lived in Moscow my whole life. I love this town. But more and more I think about leaving it. Because these people do not represent my values, and they're making it difficult to live here. And if one of us leaves, many others will follow. Not because we want to, but because we don't see another option. Her comment was met with applause and nods of agreement. The bedrock, when it is abandoned, becomes a barrier. Jesus, who was meant to be foundational, meant to be salvation, becomes a stumbling block, a source of division, a thing that is actively driving people away from community. People do not see another option. So if people in our country and people in our community keep getting tripped up on Jesus, what is our response to this reality? I'm afraid that so often we too are quick to abandon the bedrock. When people ask us what we're doing on a Sunday morning, we hesitate to say we're going to church. Church has some heavy language these days, especially here. When people ask if we're religious, we hesitate to say that we're Christian because that word has some baggage. When people ask us what we care about, we hesitate to use too churchy language. These statistics, this reality makes it difficult for us to embrace our identity as Christians. We become ashamed to associate with a brand that has caused so much harm and division. It's become so problematic, become such a barrier for people feeling safe and loved and included. So in the face of these harmful versions of Christianity, we are quick to run to secularism instead of salvation. We're quick to run to the things that we do instead of the one that we do them because of. We're quick to point to our pride flags and our food pantry and our protest signs, but do we point people to Christ? And don't mishear me. These are great, beautiful, wonderful things we do. I love being a part of a community of faith that does this. But they are an outpouring, an overflow, a result of the foundation that we have. We believe in the full inclusion of people because we believe that Jesus does not exclude or discriminate against anyone. We believe in feeding and clothing our neighbors because we believe that Jesus advocates for caring for the vulnerable. We believe in protesting against injustice because Jesus encouraged righteousness and equity. We believe that Jesus came not just to save us from the hell we're going to, but the hell we are going through. Not to escape it, but to endure it with hope and joy and justice and love. This is what it means to say that Jesus is our salvation. That he saves us from hopelessness and despair and apathy. Jesus saves us from having to use the tools of violence and empire and oppression. This is salvation. A foundation that people in our community and our country are desperately looking for. You want to know how to push back against Christian nationalism? You want to know how to change the narrative about what it means to be Christian? About Jesus? Don't abandon the bedrock. Build upon it. Be genuinely, authentically, loudly, deeply, unapologetically Christian. Has anyone in here tasted and seen that the Lord is good?
Yes, indeed.
If the answer is yes, then now is the time to be loud about it. You are a chosen people, a royal lineage, God's own people, called up and called out for this very moment, to speak up and act upon the one who has called you out of darkness into the light. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy, the text says. Once you did not see through the lies and the deception of churches and Christians and institutions that abandoned the ways of Jesus, but now you have tasted and seen the Lord's goodness. You have seen the bedrock, the cornerstone. Do not go back. yourselves, it says, of all ill will, deceit, pretense, envy, slander, and allow this church to be built up like living stones. To be built up, to be built in a place where Jesus dwells. Where the ways of Jesus are loudly and proudly proclaimed, where the ways of Jesus are loudly and proudly practiced. Without Christ as our foundation, we are just an underfunded community center. Without Jesus as our foundation, we allow Jesus to continue being a stumbling block. Without Christ as our foundation, people feel they have no other option but to discard the ways of Jesus. There's a poem by Maggie Smith that I find myself returning to again and again these days called Good Bones. It goes like this. Life is short, though I keep this from my children. Life is short, and I've shortened mine in 1,000 delicious, ill-advised ways. 1,000 deliciously ill-advised ways that I'll keep from my children. The world is at least 50% terrible, and that's a conservative estimate, though I keep this from my children. For every bird, there is a stone thrown at a bird. For every loved child, a child broken, bagged, sunk in a lake. Life is short, and the world is at least half terrible, and for every kind stranger, there is one who would break you, though I keep this from my children. I am trying to sell them the world. Any decent realtor walking you through a real shithole chirps on about good bones. This place could be beautiful, right? You could make this place beautiful. Life is short, and people believe this faith we profess is at least 50% terrible, and that's a conservative estimate. Because for every act of mercy and justice and love, there is someone taking the name of Jesus in vain, using and abusing it for their own gain. But you are God's chosen realtor, walking people through the wreckage of the world, pointing to the good bones, the bedrock. This faith could be beautiful, right? We could make this faith beautiful. You are Cornerstone Christians, tasked with building up the foundational ways of Jesus so that others may taste and see the goodness of God. The way through. Do not abandon the bedrock.